It isn't just overheated modules that burn out with too much use. Over the years that I've been exploring New Eden, I've noticed that many, if not most, of us capsuleers just don't seem to grasp that in a sandbox, it is imagination that guides our experience. We ritualistically and relentlessly strip Eve of its dignity and boil it down to atoms and quarks instead of acknowledging the totality of its magnificent digital phenotype. Let me ask you something. Have you ever caught yourself doing something that you don't like just because it's higher ISK per hour than something you do? How about feeling pressured to bling out your PvP ship so you don't appear poor among your peers? Or maybe you found yourself in a fleet being told what to do by somebody you not only don't respect, but don't even like. These tropes are not uncommon in Eve. But what's difficult to understand for many of us is that these issues are optional. The fact of the matter is, New Eden's systems are not the issue. It's that all too many Eve players simply don't let themselves have fun. In this video, I intend to accomplish 3 things. I will educate you or remind you of some common pitfalls that we are all susceptible to. I will enlighten you as to some of the pressures that we all face but rarely acknowledge in public. And finally, I will equip you with a few practical methods of enriching your experience within New Eden that you can start using right after you finish watching this video. I do have to warn you though, to actually extract value from this discussion, you'll need to be able to do something quite extraordinary. You'll need to be able to admit that you might be approaching Eve the wrong way. And that's a bitter pill to swallow, but once it's down the hatch, you may find yourself wondering what the hell took so long. To start, we're gonna examine a few major pitfalls of many that players occasionally find themselves getting stuck in. Perhaps the most pervasive of these pitfalls is the broad concept known as min-maxing. This can also be described as being overly concerned with efficiency at the expense of other aspects of your experience. Min-maxing is such a slippery slope, and many capsuleers don't realize they're sliding until they're near the end of the curve, and at that point, they're likely to have burned out a while ago, right? The reason we min-max is simple. We want to be efficacious in our activities and not waste our time. But the way we go about it and incorporate the idea into our playstyles is detrimental to our enjoyment at best and downright unhealthy at worst. Another common pitfall that capsuleers fall into is the trope of bigger ship, more fun. This is actually an understandable way of thinking for most people approaching the game, but past the first few weeks or months or however long your particular learning curve is, it should become crystal clear to anybody paying attention to mechanics like signature radius and scan resolution that in Eve, bigger does most certainly not equal better in all ways. The problem is that our imagination in this case tends to overwhelm us in a negative way. We want to naturally fly the biggest, best stuff. I mean, it's just a cool thing to do. And to be clear, we can fly big things, but we just have to understand that bigger is not better, right? Because Eve's design really does a phenomenal job at preventing power creep with regards to ship size. I mean, it does it better than any other MMO I've ever seen. In this game, big is not better by default. And if you completely ignore that aspect and just want to go straight to a Titan, you're missing out on some of the absolute coolest parts of this game. So remember, big, not necessarily better in New Eden. The final pitfall that I want to bring to your attention is the idea of skipping the line. Of course, I'm not somebody who recommends against using skill injectors entirely, because I think they have a purpose and a place in catching new players up, but it is super important that you understand that there is a healthy limit, regardless of finances, when it comes to injecting. The reason is not because it's wasteful or expensive or cheating or anything like that. The reason is because injecting too much, or even getting too many gifts or taking too many donations, completely and utterly ruins your experience in a very sinister and subtle way. Getting given that level of wealth with no journey to accompany it, it just robs you of the natural sense of progression. And you really just don't have a story. You know, you're just given an end, and you just kind of worked backwards from it. So you gotta understand that in Eve, don't just skip the line. Sit in that line. Be honored that you're in that line. Enjoy the line. Look left, look right, and understand that this line is the game. That queue never ends. Next, we're going to take a look at some of the pressures that we as capsuleers face in space, both from other players and the environment and game systems itself. When we see somebody doing something cool, it is human nature to want to try that thing out for ourselves. This is normally a really good thing, and this helps our species grow. I mean, we learn it by imitation in many ways, right? But in Eve, what happens is, due to the idea that we can skip ahead at any point, and there are so many cool things and so many cool tricks and so many cool ships, that idea of just kind of, you know, wanting to do everything you see, it quickly spirals out of control. And people that do this, they see something, they try it. They see something, they try it. Too much in Eve, they end up having a very unfocused character that can't do anything really well. And they kind of suffer as a result. They never really dug their heels in something they liked. They just copied everything. So I encourage you to take inspiration, but, you know, don't kill your own enjoyment in that way. You know, a Walla warrior, a whale player, these people are fine. They're doing their thing. But in many ways, they're hurting their own enjoyment. Doctrinal obligation is a huge issue for new players trying to find a group that suits them. The reason for this is that there is an immense amount of pressure on new recruits for corporations to be able to fly their doctrine ships, right? And when you're bouncing from corp to corp trying to find a group that you vibe with, you have to often sometimes either throw some injectors or break your training up to fly the ships that they want you to fly before you even know if you want to stick with them. So you're left with like vestigial skill points and things you don't use by virtue of corp shopping, right? So be mindful of that. When you join corps, go for the doctrines, but think long term. Don't rush it. If you rush it, you may end up regretting it. Elitism and peer pressure is by far the most annoying pressure you face in Eve, right? This is when you have a player who joins a group and, you know, you see those people in that group getting crazy kill meals with officer fit this, that, and the third, and you just cannot help but eventually get on that same path, right? I mean, you start off, you think it's okay, everybody else is doing it, and you do it, and then you get addicted to this thrill-seeking, right? You want to put officer max rolled stuff on all your big ships. You become numb to like normal PvP when you do this, right? You really do. So that's just one potential, you know, trajectory from that. But ultimately, letting other people influence you in your group, we can't really avoid it. But we can at least be mindful of it and kind of just continually check our trajectory, right? If we joined a corp as an industrialist and in a month, we're talking about flying an officer fit marshal, we can look back on the timeline there and realize, okay, something happened here and I'm not myself, right? I mean, succumbing to peer pressure like that, it's toxic and harmful to your enjoyment. So don't do that. Fight this feeling. Go with ships that make sense to you. Don't inflate your ship's value just to look cool, and just fly with what makes sense and what you can afford to lose. Common Eve trope, but very relevant. Killboard prestige is such an insidious pressure. The idea of keeping a green killboard completely dominates the thoughts of some people, to the extent where they would rather log off than risk death. And I should know, because from time to time I am exactly that type of person. It is very much so something I struggle with. But it is important to remember, and I try to remind myself of this all the time, that nobody cares about your killboard. Nobody. Not even a single person. Not even you. And they never will. You sitting there pretending like people care about your killboard as if it's gonna be your ticket into the big leagues. It's delusion. Let it go. Do what I'm doing, try to remind yourself of it, and let it go. Your killboard's red, who gives a crap? Okay, now we're going to equip you with a couple actual active things you can do to improve your enjoyment within Eve. And I do almost all of these myself. And if you watch a Nomad Tale, you may actually recognize some of these, okay? So the first one is, and this is by far the biggest one, do not take immersion for granted, okay? This is huge. You have to understand this. This is all-encompassing too. You need to fix your UI. You need to make it not take up half your screen. The aesthetics in this game are really important, and the UI is part of the aesthetics. Something I did about halfway through Ant was I gave my camera inertia, and I slowed the sensitivity down a bit, which is amazing. What this does is it kind of gives you a feel of weight to your camera, because when your camera has no weight to it, as you spin it around, it ruins the size and the scale of space, right? So if you add a little inertia and lower the sensitivity of your camera, yeah, it may take a couple days to get used to, and you may think it'll affect your combat, but it doesn't, trust me. But what happens is the game feels a lot slicker and starts to feel like there's like an actual camera out there watching you, and it's like spinning it slowly. It just feels better. Try making your camera have inertia. How about make more keybinds? Do you click any of your modules? Change it. Make sure you keybind as much stuff as humanly possible. Keybind your drones. Keybind your windows that you use. Everything. Keybind it. Keybinding connects you to the game. You're not just like staring and clicking like it's a browser. You're literally engaged on a keyboard. It's hardware. It's immersive. Whether you realize it or not, it is, right? You know, along with the camera inertia, try to zoom in as much as possible. Just zoom in. Look at your ship more often. Just take in that just incredible, beautiful game. I mean, we all know the graphics are beautiful here, but we do not appreciate them enough. Look at the nebula. Look at the citadels. Look at the structures. Look at the ships. Go out there and look at the rats. Look at the gas cloud. Look at the asteroids. I do it all the time. And it really, really, really just reminds me I'm in space. And I love it. You know? Along this note of immersion, play with sound and music. People joke about Eve not having sound and stuff. This is crazy to me. The Eve sound effects are great, and for a wormholer, they may be mandatory to listen to wormholes, right? But try to play with music too. I know you want to listen to your own music, but go to the Eve SoundCloud and listen to the old tracks when they're still slow. It's just, they're beautiful, haunting, and cerebral, and I get immersed when I put on the Eve soundtrack. So I recommend you try that if you haven't done it in a while, okay? Now let's move a little bit past the immersion and onto some behavioral things that, you know, we can try to change in the way we do. This is a theme you've heard a couple times now already, but chase fun over ISK. And the goal of this saying is, if you do that, you're going to end up with more of both of them, right? This is what happens to me in gas, right? I know gas is boring for most people, but I love it. I love doing gas and just tinkering around with stuff in the background. And what happens is I end up just like it. So I end up doing it, and then I do it more often, and then I do it so much that I end up earning more ISK than I ever would have gotten from doing it if I didn't want to do it, you know? So chase fun over ISK and you will have more of both. Here's one that is really good for new players to get through their head. Easy to fly is fun to fly. While complexity is alluring, trust me, I know, you have to understand that you got to gradually work towards it. Otherwise, you just waste a ton of power. You see this with multi-boxers, myself included. We're just out there clicking buttons, not knowing what we're doing. Start small, add more modules, add more things, slowly over time. Here's an awesome one, and I love this. Do lesser content, right? I know a class 1 site doesn't pay very well, but you can show up there in any ship you like, anything, and just shoot some rats and hang out and eat a newt or something like that and pick up some blue loot and just kind of, take yourself back to when you were newer and just enjoy it. Like, do lesser content, do lower dead sites, do unrated dead sites, and just play around with weird ships and PvE setups that don't work. Nobody has to know, right? Just have fun with content that doesn't pay that well. Try it. Just cycle through it. Go do a Rock Haven if you haven't done it in forever. Just do one. Bring yourself back to when you were in null, For established players like myself, this one applies to me, and I don't actually heed this. Yeah, I'm trying to. If you don't take risks, try taking risks, right? If you take risks all the time, try being a little more careful. Not because it'll be more fun for you, but because, it'll cut back on some of that tolerance for risk if you be a little bit more careful for a while, right? So keep that in the back of your head, okay? Whenever you accomplish something and you celebrate it, you have to celebrate it, right? And when you make a mistake, you have to acknowledge and learn from it. When you do these things, your mistakes and accomplishments feel good. They really do. If you learn from your mistake and are humble, you will feel good afterwards. Yeah, you'll take the mistake, but you'll feel good about what you learned and how you move on from it. And same thing with accomplishments. In EVE, if you do something cool, man, throw a party. Enjoy it. Shoot some fireworks. Don't gloss over it. Remember, you worked hard for that. You wanted it, and you got it. Celebrate it. Put it in your bio, And lastly, this is just a tiny little thing. I love this as somebody that plays other games where this is more common, but try collecting stuff, right? You see some people collect weird things. Make your own unique collection and learn how to get those items and make that a part of your routine for fun. Just stack an item as high as you can. For years, just stack it. You can be the guy with, or the gal, or anybody with the most possible amount of an item if you want, or you can just have a nice colorful collection of ships. Sky's the limit. Use your imagination and try collecting something. It's just cool to have something, grow over time. It's like points, in a game, right? Okay, the last part of the equipping section where I give you some practical tips is in regards to socialization, right? Now, I'm a solo player now, so this is a little weird for me to say this, but I do have plenty of experience with groups, okay? And I only have a few things to say. First and most important is change your corporation when things become stale. Do not sit in your corporation if you're not having a good time. I don't care if you're in the middle of a losing war. I don't care if all of your friends are there. You have to go have fun. If you've been with the same corporation for a while, and it's not like it's bad, but maybe it's just not the same anymore, try leaving. They're amicable with you. Try leaving. Do something new. Go on your own or try a new corp. Make a new corp. You can always go back if you frame this right, right? Don't be afraid to leave something good and go to something unknown or bad. You might be the hero in that group, right? You might like being the vet among new bros. You'll never know unless you try. Another thing that I do all the time that I want you to try doing is to just talk to people in the game. It doesn't have to be in local. When I see people pop through wormholes, sometimes I'll open a convo and be like, hey, I just saw you go through a hole. How are you? And we just chat, Stuff like that. It's so small, but it reminds you these are real people, and you can use Google Translate to talk to these guys. It's, nothing to it. It's just get out there and talk to people that aren't in your faction, Get out of that bubble, right? And the last social thing I want to touch on is this idea of if you're wealthy in the game or you're established and you're killing people, I want you to pay for their losses. Okay, a lot of people do this already, but I want you to do it as well. I want you to SRP, ship replacement program, people that you kill as often as possible, especially if they're new, but not always. I want you to give them money equal or in part to the ship that they lost. And the reason for this is that it feels really good when somebody SRPs you for a ship that you lost that you were upset about, okay? And you have that opportunity to do to anybody you kill at any time. You can make that person feel good, and you can still retain all the positivity of getting that kill by SRPing them, right? Another side of this is the whole idea of shooting to recruit, which is what corporations do when They want to recruit, they'll go out and hunt people, and if they hunt somebody who they thought is good, they will try to recruit them after they've killed them. Shoot to recruit. I want you to think about this concept, but for yourself as well. When you kill them, talk to them. See if they want help. Don't give them help. See if they want it. See if they want money, if you're worried about just giving them money. See if they're looking for a group. See if just learn a little bit about them if they'd like to talk. Humanize yourself and go out there and show them that this game is not as cold as they think. And killing people in this game for sport in their ships, it doesn't have to be cruel. It doesn't. It's just how most people tend to look at it. So, yeah. Would you still do the things that you do in Eve if ISK was entirely removed from the game? For most of us, the answer to this question is an unequivocal no, without even thinking. And that's something to consider. It really is. There is no part of me that believes we as capsuleers don't have the ability to enjoy this sandbox on a daily basis. But I also recognize that right now, far too many of us do not. And it's not really the game's fault. That's the thesis here. We fall into traps that we've been warned about, and we perpetuate them and inflict them on others. We ignore the extreme pressures that we know are there but don't want to admit. And honestly, we do everything in our power to ruin the immersion and feel of the game. No wonder we don't enjoy it. But I want you to understand that this is not a rule. You can break out of this paradigm. You can enjoy this game, and indeed, you can enjoy this life. You can have fun. You can let go. It just takes a bit of understanding in terms of what you're facing and some incredibly difficult admissions, right? Try considering some of the topics that we discussed in this video. Next time something frustrates you, ask yourself, do I even need to be doing this thing? Do I really need to? Next time you do something incredibly fun, ask yourself, why am I not doing this more often? If you chase the fun, it does not get far away from you. I know you know that Eve is a really beautiful and just delicate game. I just want you to remember it.